A few weeks ago in early November, we had a chance to go to Key West to see an old buddy of mine, Al Kanish. And what he said he would do is he would bring me down to take a look at the house that his partner lived in, his partner Martha, who's an artist. It's a house that you really can't quite see from the street. It's very overgrown in front. You think you can see it until you go inside, and there you suddenly realize that the house has been built up over a period of time so that it's 5 or 6 houses all kind of interconnected and built up. It's one where Martha grew up, and that her mother lived and worked in, being both a painter and a sculptor. And her mother was, as far as I could tell from the brief conversation I had with Al and with Martha, was an obsessed artist. And what her mother did is, over a period of time, brought more and more people into this house who were fellow artists. Of course, her children lived here. Martha lived here, and her sister, and probably 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 other individuals who were artists. And from the looks of the house, since Martha's mother, Susie, had just died a few months before we got there, that the house was of little concern as long as you kept the rains out. It hadn't been painted. It was surrounded by trees for shade. But one of the things that struck me about this house as we kind of wandered through it is there are the usual Key West chickens and roosters and cats around, and there are some people who are still living in the house after she died. There's a kind of question as to what's going to happen to the house. But the thing that really struck me were these wire and metal sculptures, which were really extraordinary, and that she was working on, I guess, right up until the day of her death. One of the things that really struck me about the house as we kind of wandered around the grounds and we looked at things in progress, so to speak, things left half finished, it was really like an artist's mind. You're always working on several things, things are going towards completion, and then some other things are just starting out, and There's some pictures of Martha herself, who's, besides being a very, very good painter, in Bahamian scenes, beautiful, brightly colored stuff. This is some of her dancing as well. The thing about the sculpture, which people who are poets or writers or musicians, I guess, I guess musicians have a sense of it too, is the physical world. But I think writers don't. Making these things is an enormous physical effort. You can just look at the twisted wire there, and you have to get it right. You can't make a lot of mistakes in the complexity of the things that she's doing. Some are mobiles, meant to float, and all those large color things that you see on the floor there, outside of the pictures there of Martha as a dancer, are of ceramic works, flat. You don't see that anymore, but that was an old Cuban thing. You can see it in some of, for example, at the Colombian restaurant in Tampa, which goes back to the time of Teddy Roosevelt. You'll see those large tile decorative pictures, made of little pieces of tile, But anyway, this is some of the other things that continue to surprise us. The place is just filled with odd things, little animals, stuffed animals, and dolls, they seem to be a favorite of women artists. There was a woman in Alamos had the most beautiful house that I photographed and that I made into a dream story called House of Women, who also worked in fabrics, you know, almost exclusively, but she had this crazy, very funny doll collection, and they were all over the house, you know. It's just something that I guess you grew from the love of dolls as a girl, and they got more odd and strange and lovable as they got older. This is a little kind of view of the downstairs from the studio, and this is an area where Susie would sit and rest, you know, and I can only imagine that in its heyday, and probably right up to the time she died, it was a place where you were with kindred souls, you know. I think that's important for artists, because you are working from a whole different set of values than most of your neighbors, you know. You're not so much concerned with stuff, but you're concerned with beauty, which makes you an oddball in today's world. But from my point of view, it makes you a rare oddball, and one that people should pay attention to. Because without beauty, what you have is you have nothing. And here you can see that the concern with stuff was absolutely zero. It wasn't important. What was important was letting the imagination run wild, you know. And here again, we're back in Martha's studio, which is a little room of the many, many rooms. You know, I mean, we probably covered about 15% of the house, because the rest of the house is occupied with people who are working on painting or sculpture or whatever, or just living, you know. And Martha told me at one time there were 15 or 20 cats living here, God knows how many chickens. This is some of Martha's work. It's really beautiful. It's highly colorful, and it's of the Caribbean areas, you know. And she's working from some historical documents as well. But I love her renderings of them. The color is so vibrant and just pops off the canvas at you, you know. So I don't know if her work is that well known. She tends to be very private. So some of her work just never gets out to the world, and there are many artists like that. Here's one of the source books that she's working from, you know, in order to get the costumes correct, and then she adds the colors in and things like that. So she's a pretty serious artist, and working back from the old photographs, and then you're trying to render something that is beautiful. You have to bring it out of the black and white of the history books and to bring it into the world of art. I think that's a picture of her mother as a young woman. I don't know for sure. Al didn't know. It may be a sister of her mother, but whoever it was, it's a very striking woman. That's for sure. And this is a little view of the trees and the roofs of the various parts of the house that have been just built up over time, you know. It's a green, shady place. It was so nice to walk through this place because it was like living in a forest, and you had all the wonderful tints of green and light coming down at you. And I know that it makes the place extremely, extremely cool, during the day. And it just makes it a joy when you look out the window that really you don't see anything except trees. And if you're walking around, you don't see anything but trees. Or you'll see a piece of the next house. There's one of the cats on the roof over there. They're just going along. But all those rooms are, I don't know if all of them are occupied, but most of them are. Some of them are relations, and then some are just artists and friends of Susie's. She took in a lot of strays, and it was the way that she wanted to live. Just like she would pick up a bottle or a piece of glass or something, and she would also pick up people and bring them in. Anyway, that was the trip.
number you have dialed has been changed. The new number is... Please note, the new number is